Hello again, everyone. This is American Idioms, part 129. This is part 129 in my American Idioms series, and like the others, I'll present 5 idioms to you, numbered 641 to 645. But first, I'll give you a chance to guess their meanings. Then I'll give you the answers along with an additional example for each new idiom. I also recommend that you pause the video at each question to give yourself some extra time to think of the answers. So, are you ready? Okay, here we go. Number 641. Split a gut. And the example is, I split a gut after I took one look at my sister's new dress. It was cheap and it looked ridiculous on her. Can you guess the meaning? And the answer here is B, to laugh very hard. Okay, it's almost like you're laughing so hard that you split your stomach. Your gut is your stomach, or you hurt your sides of your body. Okay, you're like splitting something open, like your stomach. You're laughing so hard. All right, like in our example, this person took one look at his sister's dress and it looked very cheap and ridiculous on her. Okay, so he split a gut. He laughed very hard. Here's another example. I was splitting a gut last night as I listened to my uncle tell many humorous stories about his childhood. All right, we have the same situation where this person's laughing very hard because his uncle was telling these stories about when he was a young child. Okay? And now for number 642, split hairs. And the example is, our manager spent the whole meeting splitting hairs over minor issues in our department when he could have addressed some of the more important problems we are currently dealing with. What a waste of time! Can you guess the meaning? And the answer here is C, to make or focus on trivial or petty details, like our example. The manager here was talking about some minor issues in their department at the meeting that they had, instead of dealing with some of the, let's say, more important problems that they were going through, right? Or they were trying to deal with. All right, that's why this person said it was a waste of time, because he was splitting hairs, all right, focusing on minor details in this case, or minor issues. Here's another example. Let's not split hairs about who is responsible for not making our deadline this week. We are a team, so we should be looking at why we aren't working well together. All right, so they're splitting hairs about who's responsible or trying to blame somebody for not making the deadline, right? Maybe looking at petty things here instead of the big picture, as we say, right? Why aren't they working well together? Okay? This is what it means. And now for number 643, across the pond. And the example is, their new album was a huge hit across the pond, but here in the US, it wasn't very popular. Can you guess the meaning? And the answer here is B, across the Atlantic Ocean. All right. Now, I've heard many people in England use this expression, across the pond, meaning across the Atlantic in the United States. Okay? But be aware that some people, Americans like myself, use it to refer to England, across the pond, meaning across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay? It's used a lot. All right? But again, it's mostly used, in my opinion, by British speakers. Here's another example. She wants to spend her vacation across the pond, possibly in New York City. All right, now this person's in England, and they're talking about across the pond, meaning across the ocean, right? In New York City, in America. Okay? Now for number 644, a cold fish. And the example is, I tried to make conversation with a new student in our class yesterday, but he's a bit of a cold fish and he didn't seem to be interested in talking to me. Can you guess the meaning? And the answer here is C, a person who shows little or no emotion or is unfriendly. Okay? Let's say they act like a cold fish. If you've seen a cold fish, they have no expression on their face, right? Okay? And then the person resembles this. Like in our example, the person was trying to talk to this new student in their class, right? And he called him a cold fish because he didn't seem to be interested in talking to this person, right? Or maybe he didn't show emotion, or he seemed unfriendly. This is what we mean when we call someone a cold fish. Which really is not a good thing or a nice thing to say about somebody. Like our next example. Scott is a nice guy, but he was a cold fish at the party last night and barely spoke to anyone. All right, so Scott in this case was a cold fish, meaning he had no emotion and seemed unfriendly and he didn't speak to anyone. So that's why they called him a cold fish. Now for our final idiom, number 645, a country bumpkin. And the example is, I felt like a country bumpkin when I first moved to New York City, but after a while, I got used to everything. Can you guess the meaning? And the answer here is a foolish, poorly educated person from a rural area or from the country, as we say, right? A country bumpkin. In our example, this person felt like a person from the rural area. And sometimes you could say that they're foolish or poorly educated, even though, again, this is not a nice thing to say about somebody, right? If you're called a country bumpkin. All right. But this person felt like one. And when he first moved to New York City, and he got used to it after a while. Here's another example. Because he dressed a little different and spoke with a southern accent, everyone thought he was a country bumpkin at first. But they were wrong about him because his ideas about everything being discussed were quite sophisticated. All right, they're fooled because he didn't seem as sophisticated as them at first, but it turned out he was just as sophisticated as they were. That's all for this video. Thanks again for subscribing, and please like and share the video to support the channel. And remember what I always say, keep practicing. See you next time.